dual monitor situation there. We have a fabulous and what I think is, super duper timely webinar today, the new reality ways to connect and support remotely. And those of you who dialed in a little bit early got to watch us in action while we're trying to connect and support remotely. Thank you. We know it was an effort to actually get into the webinar today, depending on your browser and your VA system. So thanks for getting here. Just a quick bit about Division 18 before we launch into introducing you to our presenters today. Division 18 is really considered the home for VA psychologists within the American Psychological Association. It's also the home for other public service psychologists, such as those who work in community and state hospitals, Indian country, criminal justice, and those who work with veterans, excuse me, not just veterans, but people with SMI and police and public safety officials. So I will put a link in the chat to our website, but it looks like probably most of the folks who are on this webinar are already Division 18 VA section members, so thank you. You'll notice at the bottom of your screen, there are two ways to communicate with the presenters. If you have a question, we ask that you use the Q&A chat. It actually says Q&A and there are two little bubbles there versus the chat, which is just, if you want to say hi to somebody else that you see on the meeting, perhaps. So if you have a question for the presenters, please put it in the Q&A. I will try to monitor both the chat and the Q&A. But if you put it in the Q&A, then we know that that is actually a question for the presenters. Okay, so now that we've gotten through all of that, I will be happy to introduce our speakers. Oh, I do want to say, those of you who are Division 18 members, you will get one free CEU for this session if you respond to the survey, and I will put a link in the chat box at the end of the session, and you will have 2 weeks to complete that survey, and then the CEU certificates will be sent out after that 2-week period. If you are not a Division 18 member, then the CEU fee is only $15, so that's still a bargain. But if you become a Division 18 member, then you get all the CEUs for free for all of the webinars. So that is truly a bargain. Okay, so enough about that. Let me introduce our amazing speakers. Let's start with Dr. Claire Collie. She is a clinical psychologist in the Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention and serves as the National Director for VA's local evidence-based psychotherapy coordinator program. She is also a national mental health quality improvement and implementation consultant who supports ongoing process improvement in mental health operations. Dr. Collie provides consultation on the implementation of EBPs and serves on national committees and work groups as a consultant on multiple EBP implementation research grants. Oh, Marcy, we just lost your, oh, there it goes. It keeps, my screen keeps flashing, just so you know. I'm not sure if that's happening to other folks, but Dr. Collie also chairs the Advisory Steering Committee overseeing the development of APA's clinical practice guidelines and is a member of the work group that's updating the VA-DoD Major Depressive Disorder Clinical Practice Guidelines. Dr. Marcia Hunt is a licensed clinical psychologist and quality improvement and implementation consultant in the Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention. In this position, she partners with VISN Chief Mental Health Officers for the monitoring of the quality and operational integrity of mental health care delivery. She's also an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry at Yale University Medical School and an investigator with the VISN-1 MIREC. Within VHA, Dr. Hunt serves on numerous national committees and work groups related to mental health. Within APA, she's very, very busy. She serves on the Task Force for Serious Mental Illness SMI, and serious emotional disturbance, SED, chairs the Training and Evaluation Committee of the Specialty Council for SMI Psychology, the APA Healthcare Finance Committee, and leads the Division 18 SMI SED Section Advocacy Committee. She's received numerous awards, including the AVAPL Professional Service Award. Dr. Matt Moore is a clinical psychologist who spent his career in a variety of clinical and administrative positions within VA. He earned his PhD from the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas. From his early days working at VA in the clinical front lines, his focus has consistently been on improving mental health care for veterans. He took on a variety of roles in support that advanced the management of VA outpatient clinics and overseeing facility-wide mental health services. In 2015, he moved into his current role in central office in the mental health and suicide prevention as a national quality improvement and implementation consultant. Last but certainly not least is Dr. Theresa Schmitz, who's a licensed clinical psychologist with extensive experience in evidence-based couple and family interventions, trauma, intimate partner violence, and resilience. Dr. Schmitz currently serves as a National Mental Health Quality Improvement and Implementation Consultant. You can see on your screen, they're an amazing team, where she utilizes her expertise as a ProSci certified process improvement practitioner to translate policy guidance and performance metrics into sustainable improvements across VA. Additionally, she co-leads a national mentorship work group for AVAPL and engages in numerous professional service efforts across VA, such as the Intimate Partner Violence Steering Committee and Mental Health Residential Rehabilitation Governance Council. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the VHA Quality Improvement and Implementation Consultant team. Take it away, guys.
Thank you so much, Dr. Iwamasa, for that lovely introduction of all of us. And you might notice that you don't get to see my picture on the screen as one way that we are assuring we are able to be adaptive in the face of our current reality. We would like to also thank all of you for joining us for today's Division 18 webinar. We plan to talk about a few practical tips for team members and leaders. So today's presentation is interactive. We're going to be asking all of you a few poll questions throughout the presentation, and towards the end, we'll actually try to open up the lines to have open discussion. So we're hoping that the poll questions can allow us to get a better sense of the audience composition, along with some of your specific needs and experiences. Please use the chat function to respond to these poll questions. When doing so, please be sure to select the All Panelists and Attendees option in the dropdown. That will assure everyone is able to see your response. Next slide. So with our first poll question, we are hoping you can help us understand which of these apply to your team. All of your team members are virtual. Some combination are virtual and in person, so they may do both, or all members are in person. And if folks are having trouble with the chat, oh, thanks, I'm starting to see some responses now. Okay, so we have folks who are all virtual on their team. Others? Oh, okay, perfect. Some combination, folks. We'll give everyone just another minute or two here. We're seeing okay, thanks, Josh. That's really helpful to get a context for. Okay, perfect. So a lot of folks are either a mix with sometime virtual, sometime in person, amongst team members, or all members engaging their work duties virtually. Next slide. So for our second poll question, we would like for those of you who are on a team where members are either all or partially virtual to consider and let us know how many of you have made that transition since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So Josh actually was ahead of the curve there in anticipation of this poll question. And so you can either say A or yes, or B or no. Yep, perfect. Seeing a lot of A here. So a lot of folks transitioned after the pandemic began. And that's really helpful for us as we think about the things with which you and your team might be struggling. And as I mentioned before, when we think about that point in the conversation we're having today where we have open discussion, we'll actually invite you to share some of your experiences directly. All right, so next slide, please. And this is our third poll question. If you are working on a virtual team now, how do your current interactions and team functioning compare to the past when you were primarily interacting in person? Has there been little to no change? Have you continued your regular meetings or huddles, but have observed that there's less unscheduled interaction? Or C, there's an experience where folks are feeling significantly less connected to individuals on the team and as colleagues. Really glad to see there's some A here. And that, for those of you who are able to say that there have been little or no change, and we're hoping that reflects a nice ideal state for your team, we'll be looking forward to hearing you share what works for you. For those who are responding C, we appreciate that you're being so candid about that experience, and we will be talking about some strategies that might help address some of those things with which you and your team might be wrestling. Okay, I saw the responses slow down, so next slide, please. So as you might have gotten the hint from our title, today we'll be speaking with you about a number of ways to support your team and each other, as so many are working in a remote or virtual modality for at least some portion of our work life. We will discuss what works, along with what doesn't, from the perspective of our team that is fully virtual. We encourage all of you, as I mentioned a moment ago, to share your successes, your struggles, all of your different perspectives, and utilize the chat function in order to do so. So as we go along, if something strikes a fancy for you or makes you think of something that you guys did on your team that was particularly useful or particularly was not, we do encourage you to share that. We will also be taking a few minutes to review a few specific strategies to connect at this time of year when we would typically have the opportunity to share in gratitude and holiday festivities and recognition together. More often than not, that would have been in person in years past. And finally, we also have a resource section where we included a number of support and resource options for all of you. We hope that you'll download these slides and examine these resources further after today's webinar and use them as a resource to consult later or share with others on your team. Next slide. Okay, so we'd like to share a little bit of background on our team for those of you who may be unfamiliar with us or not as familiar with the way our team works and the work that we do. This is to help provide some context for all of the different perspectives we will be sharing today. Our team was formed in fiscal year 11 as a fully virtual team. So we do acknowledge that our team's experiences may differ from those teams who've had to transition more recently from the traditional face-to-face working environment to a more virtual orientation. But because we've had numerous team members join the team from the field following the team's inception, we've also had the benefit of learning through their transition experiences as well. We hope that our suggestions can be helpful as your team continues to adjust to the ongoing challenges that we are all facing. Our team, just to kind of get more specific here, our team is formally comprised of 7 team members, although, like some of your teams, we currently have a few vacancies. Each of the team members on the Quick team have experience working in the field, and we each have different areas of subject matter expertise in addition to our expertise in process improvement. Although there have been some transitions on our team, we have been working together with much of our current team membership for the last several years. The Quick team, which some of you may recall being called technical assistance specialists, was initially developed with a mission or charge to monitor and support VISNs and facilities in their efforts to implement mental health policy and requirements and provide consultation in mental health business operations and process improvement endeavors. Our team's mission is one that evolves in response to identified Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention and larger VA priorities. Team member roles are clearly defined on our team. Although all team members are ready to jump in and provide cross coverage for each other with a moment's notice, but we always give more than a moment. We have expanded or adapted our roles to support the team, our office, the larger organization, or other asks as needed in support of VA's mission. Because the QUIC team exists within the Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, as you heard Dr. Iwamasa so nicely share as part of all of our backgrounds, our leadership within the Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention play a key role in how our team interfaces with others internal and external to the office. Next slide. Okay, now that you have a bit of context for our team, we thought it would be good to start by offering a few of the things that we have found to be integral ingredients to fostering and maintaining team cohesion, despite our team's fully virtual orientation. Again, we'd like to acknowledge that the strategies here are not unique to virtual teams, even though we're speaking from that perspective. But in fact, we believe that these strategies are critical to the healthy functioning of any team. However, you guys maybe have experienced this as you've made the transition. Most of the folks have transitioned after the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that without those day-to-day, in-person, unscheduled interactions, it can be tough to connect and to feel as though you have a sense of the team. And it's been our experience that these things become especially important to attend to when working together virtually. Okay, so how does our team do that? Our team reaches out to each other individually and collectively in a variety of ways, including through instant message, team messages, email or phone calls. And we do this to offer support and assistance, often unsolicited, but we also, and we'll hear about this later as my colleagues review some of our additional strategies and perspectives. We do this by also reading the team and having a sense of, what maybe fits with what we would expect for team interactions or interactions with an individual versus those that seem a little bit inconsistent with our previous interactions. We think about and look for those ways to support whenever needed. These efforts positively contribute to a sense that our team can count on one another and that the team will always be here to support you. Connections and opportunities to check in with the team can be scheduled or unscheduled and can be more or less structured. And it's been our experience that the greatest benefit comes from a mix of both. So for example, our team actually has a weekly meeting every Friday and a brief midweek huddle. The Friday meeting consistently involves our supervisor, and our midweek huddle always invites or includes our supervisor if time permits, but we actually use that as an ad hoc or drop-in opportunity to connect with our supervisor in an effort to be respectful of the team's time and our supervisor's time. Our team rotates the responsibility for developing the agenda and coordinating that Friday call, but any team member can request time on the agenda to brief the team with updates or raise issues of concern for the team's awareness and discussion. It's also important for teams to have mechanisms to connect between meetings. So for example, using instant message or Teams chat, followed possibly, if needed, by a quick phone call, especially when something arises that requires the team's urgent attention. Each member on the team should have designated responsibilities that the other team members are aware of. And so that's certainly the case for the QUIC team. As an example of that, our team is currently assigned to work with specific VISNs and the facilities within those VISNs. So whenever we think about encountering a new ask or project, we consider those facets, those regularly designated and defined responsibilities, and put them in the context of how does that fit for the team? And then we work together to agree on the approach so that there's an opportunity to avoid duplication of efforts or working at cross purposes. It's also really important to be aware of each team member's area of expertise and to reach out for consultation or assure that that team member is looped in to relevant discussions when something overlaps with that team member's expertise area. A guiding principle and value for our team is the importance of transparency in our work together. Although we sometimes unintentionally fall short of that standard, especially when things are fast-moving or there are urgent issues or asks, we absolutely strive for transparency, and we regularly debrief to assure opportunities to discuss together and process any instances where these team values are inadvertently violated. This is an example of why it is so critically important to discuss the team's mission, as well as team and individual values and beliefs, to be able to continually assess how we're doing in relation to those values and beliefs, and then additionally revisit those discussions regularly to assure that the team is operating in a way that is consistent with shared values. Next slide. So, as we think about all of these pieces that our team experiences and values, that brings us to our very next poll question. So, has your team discussed values and beliefs for the team? And again, we remind you to use that chat function and make sure you're selecting all. And so we'd love to hear how or whether you have discussed beliefs and values of the team, or whether that's not something that you've engaged in, and we'll add a yet to that, because hopefully you will after today's presentation. Okay, seeing a mix so far. Great. And for folks that maybe haven't, as we think about those strategies, one thing that might be helpful when we have some space to talk collectively is to think about what some of the barriers to discussing beliefs and values of the team might be. But for now, I am going to hand off to my amazing colleague, Dr. Matt Moore, to continue our conversation.
All right, so I think I am off mute, and I think I have my video going. Hi, everybody, and thanks, Theresa. So let's continue to discuss some additional items in our collective toolbox, so to speak, for effective communication for virtual teams. And as Theresa said, for that matter, virtual or non-virtual. First of all, humor. Humor is the great disarmor of tension. If it's used appropriately, and certainly not at any team member's expense, even probably the most powerful type of humor is self-deprecating humor. As we know, the ability to laugh at ourselves is a true equalizer, and it can diffuse tensions that might be building up on the team. And as we all know, stuff happens. I would get use the more vernacular term for that, but let's keep it clean. Stuff happens. Balls get dropped, mistakes are made, and we are all human. None of us are perfect. So it is important to allow for grace when something happens on the team, and expressing understanding about that. Yes, you might be unhappy when something goes wrong, and you might get irritated, and it might be even more so in a virtual situation. Those are normal reactions. But remembering to season the reaction with a little bit of grace can go a long way to help the team remain solid. And coming back around to the reinforcement of what the team's shared vision is, remembering that, reinforcing that. And finally, frequent check-ins should also be routine for virtual teams, especially related to the distribution of workload, even brief huddles, impromptu huddles as needed, and at a frequency that feels comfortable for the team. It can be invaluable. Next slide, please. Being virtual does remove some of the basic physical cues that we all come to rely upon when working in the same office. Even with our cameras on, it's hard to pick up on subtle facial expressions. And with the lure of multitasking when in virtual online meetings, and admit it, some of you are probably multitasking right now, facial expressions or the lack thereof of a teammate might not have anything to do with the topic being discussed in the meeting itself. It could be something totally unrelated. If you and the team were all in one office, you might notice that someone's door has been closed for longer than usual, or atypically, perhaps throughout the day, even when not in session or in a confidential meeting. But remember, there are available cues when working virtually. A coworker's tone of voice may be different. Perhaps they're more curt. Perhaps they're more soft-spoken. Even the syntax of his or her responses may be different than usual. Maybe just not sounding a little off, that kind of air quote off. The modality of contact could shift over time. Perhaps their availability on Teams is now in a constant do not disturb status, or constant the red light, the busy status. And typically they've been much more available. A team member's responsiveness may shift. They may have been very responsive in the past, and now things are a little bit more delayed than usual. Or you might notice that some folks don't get back to you at all. And also the congruence of their presentation might be a little off kilter. So they might say they're doing well, but their voice and or other visual cues don't match that. So next slide, please. We're going to do another poll here. For those teams that are now predominantly virtual, and I think the majority of folks, based on the previous poll, most folks are predominantly virtual, or including a mix of virtual and in person. How is the quality of communication compared to when your team was predominantly face-to-face or in person? Is it harder? Is it easier? I'm seeing it's a little bit of a mix, but probably some more C, same. No, kind of, I'm seeing a lot of C and A's, A and C. Yeah, kind of a mixed bag. All right. Next slide, please. So in order to build an improved communication culture, the team really has to be proactive about it. And that's true for us. Our team is a permanently virtual team, but I would imagine that teams that have shifted to virtual from being face-to-face, it might have actually been a little bit easier for you to be proactive about it, but it must be proactive. Teams really need to be explicit about the collaborative decision-making, where they state and then restate that the team is looking for everyone's involvement and to reach out and engage those that might be stepping back. Fostering full team engagement during collaboration and being mindful of who isn't engaging. Again, without making assumptions, awareness and being non-judgmental are critical here, and assumptions can be harmful. There could be a number of reasons why somebody is not fully engaged, and it might not just be because they're not wanting to do that. Ensure that praise opportunities and good times are shared as evenly as possible. You look for those opportunities, those attaboys, attagirls, the yay team. These often go unsaid when we have limited meeting times, when we're just doing this online or virtually, as opposed to those kind of casual encounters you might have with coworkers in the break room or water cooler discussions, so to speak. Those happen naturally in an in-person work setting. They don't necessarily happen for virtual teams. Ensure that less desirable work is shared as equally as possible. Every team has work that is no one's favorite type of work. And so making it explicit that the team is going to work with one another to share the pain. And finally, celebrate the diversity of the expertise on your team. Encourage and accept input based on that expertise. As we all know, if everyone on the team had the same full range of expertise and experience, there'd really be no need for the team. So celebrate that, reach out, and recognize that diversity. Next slide, please. So we all know disagreements among coworkers and conflicts are going to happen. It's just the nature of who we are as human beings. Some of those conflicts are within the control of the team, and some might not be. It's important for the team to work through those conflicts or disagreements, however, keeping the focus on what can be controlled, what the team can do to address that. And when team members disagree, there's often an opportunity to look for mediators within the team who can help resolve the issues. Keeping in mind that it's important to remember what the shared vision is, encouraging, as I said earlier, grace and generosity, promoting fairness in the proposed resolution so that all are treated equally, and promote team cohesion. Remind teammates that we are all in the same boat. So let's get this resolved together. Next slide, please. So another poll question. How would you rate your virtual team on working through conflict and disagreement? So is your team sort of down at the lower end of the scale, not good, or do you feel like you're pretty good at getting things resolved? Seeing ones and twos. Okay, 3 and 4, 4. Okay. I guess we are sort of in the mental health profession. Hopefully we are able to resolve that just naturally. But it's a good thing to remember to be proactive about. All right, thanks. Next slide, please. All right, so teams are really a collection of me's. And it's critically important if we're going to be good teammates to also look after ourselves. There should be no surprises in this list that's on this slide. Some people may be newer to virtual work where these are not necessarily built in the same way that they are when working in an office-like setting. So let's run through these really quickly. This is just, again, good self-care to begin with. But so practicing for yourself and encouraging others on the team to engage in self-care, whether that's regular exercise, meditation, focused spiritual practice, and so on, and having conversations on the team for folks to share what they've been doing to take care of themselves, and hopefully encouraging each other to do that through those discussions. It's super important to structure your day. Working from home, it's very easy to not necessarily have a structure or routine, but it is super important where you have set things that you do in order to get ready for work, routines to get logged on and ready to take on the day. Those routines are built in when you're actually having to get in your mode of transportation and getting to work and getting settled in. Same thing would apply for working from home. It's important to remember to take breaks. It's so easy to sit down at your desk and get sucked into work and forget to actually stand up, stretch, even go for short walks, longer walks, go out quickly to grab a bite, a safe bite for lunch, but to get away from the desk. Also tolerating and accepting those awkward interruptions. Dogs will bark. I'm surprised my dog has not barked in this presentation. Delivery people are going to ring your doorbell. Kids are going to get hungry or need help with schoolwork. You name it, it will happen, and it's going to disrupt your meetings or your day. Anticipate and expect IT fails. They will happen. This was demonstrated today, getting logged into this meeting. But be sure that you have some backup plans ready to go when those tech issues come up. Have virtual buddies. An instant message from a buddy with simply a smiley face can go a long way, and giving that to coworkers can also be a way to spread the joy. I know I have a warm feeling when I just randomly get a smiley face through IM. So take an opportunity today just to do that. Address any missteps or mistakes right away and in a non-defensive manner. Accept feedback from your teammates if they have feedback about any mistakes or missteps you might have made. And remember you have team support, and remember to support your team. That's sort of the an important point to remember. So I'd like to hand this off to my colleague, Dr. Marcia Hutt, to take us forward. Dr. Hunt, are you there?
Sorry, there. I had two mutes to unmute. Speaking of anticipate and expect IT fails. So thank you very much for that, Dr. Moore. I'm going to shift gears now and talk a little bit about what is not helpful in building and supporting your team. This, of course, is not an exhaustive list, but it covers many of the more common pitfalls. And in looking at these, when we constructed them, I could see that they fall into a couple of broad categories. Number one, forgetting you're a team member, first and foremost. And the second category is being able to talk about friction as a team. So the first part's a little bit easier, trying to remember that you're a team member first and foremost. And I say easier with air quotes, because it certainly can be a change in thinking and behaving. But the others also depend on everyone else in the teams. So it's under team control, but not individual control. And those are things like working on the projects that might touch teamwork without updating the team. And so we call that going solo. It's a way to kind of hurt feelings, even if you don't intend to. Forming cliques is another thing that it is kind of about not remembering that you're a team member. And then the last four fall into that friction category, being unclear on the mission or team values, or repeated violation of team mission and values. Feelings of unfairness that aren't discussed or resolved, that can cause a lot of friction. So can not addressing emotional safety in the team. And that's a pretty tricky one, particularly if you have gotten off track and there are cliques, or there's folks that are going solo, or people feel that there's a lot of unfairness. That can be really difficult. So addressing that emotional safety in the team early really can help. The last two, team members not self-monitoring and team members not helping shape team behavior, I'd flip those on their heads and say, if you do self-monitor and you do help shape team behavior, that would really help out in that team cohesiveness. When we were talking about unfairness, feelings of unfairness, or things that aren't discussed, some of those examples that we came up with, because that can be a broad term, unfairness, is like if some of the team members are returning to face-to-face care and others remain on telework or remote work, there can be feelings of unfairness around that, depending upon which direction people want to go. And another big one is health or other personal complications that may impact the work environment, but are private to an individual employee, and so not really widely shared. So just kind of giving you some examples of that. And then talking about the mission and values piece, that is the piece that will kind of guide you. It'll make it easier to address all the other issues of unfairness or emotional safety or cliques. So that means that the team needs to address any differing perspectives on appropriateness that may come to bear with the team. So in this slide, I'm looking at shifting to team leadership in particular. So if you're a team leader, or if you're thinking about team leadership, these slides focus on that. We're talking about communication, collaboration and decisions, providing information, and managing anxiety. So I'll start with communication. Let me elaborate on the first point, addressing team members' emotional needs appropriately. That can be pretty tricky. An example of this might be something like your larger office is going through some changes, maybe a reorganization, and people are concerned about what this might mean to their jobs. So noting that anxiety as a group can be very helpful. If you're a leader, pointing that out, saying that this is a difficult time right now. Same with switching to telework when we were at the beginning of COVID, when a lot of the team said that they switched. Acknowledging that, and then if someone is particularly concerned when you're having that discussion, maybe as a team lead having a one-to-one with each person so that you can address that individual anxiety. Making contacts that are genuinely, it's not generally caring, but genuinely caring, attending to available communication signals. We sort of talked about those in other areas. That's really important as a team lead. As well as helping the team understand the impact of changing decisions on daily work. We have this help make meaning here as a cue to remind us to talk a little bit about what this means. So, you know, VA is a very interesting place to work. We talk about it moving slowly like an aircraft carrier, but we also move pretty quickly, maybe on the deck of the aircraft carrier. And sometimes that changing decisions really does change how you work as a team pretty quickly. So helping people understand that and the context of it as a leader is really important. This next one, making sure the team knows that connecting with you is not a bother or an inconvenience, is also very important. That will allow people to reach out to you when they need to, and allow you to be the positive and caring leader that you can be. And then supporting your team with feedback and praise. We have here, be overt, be specific for a reason. So it's lovely to get general, wow, you guys are a great team, I really appreciate it kind of things, and that's important. But saying how and why has that special emphasis to it where it's really clear that you're understanding. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. For some reason, it's not advancing. Just a second here. Going back to those IT issues. Let's see. Here we go. All right. So this is the next part about leadership. It's you need to make room for collaborative decision making, and we touched on that before whenever possible. But this piece is really about how to manage that level of control that the team feels over their work and over what work they have that interfaces with the office. So if you're able to make room for collaborative decision making, this helps the team practice working together towards a shared goal and underscores the point that they have the ability to influence work. And that's the second part kind of plays into that. Effective leaders provide information from leadership above and other sources. So this is really critical because the more that you can share with your team to understand the context that they live in, the better. Now, we understand that there'll be things, of course, that you can't share. However, when you can, this will help reassure your team that they have a pipeline beyond team membership, and they can help you as the leader pass along things that help out the larger process. And then the last point on this slide is about managing self-anxiety without losing your humanity. So as a leader, how you overtly handle things will set the tone for the team. And that is going to be really critical, but you're a person too. So not losing your humanity while you're helping to manage their emotions is key. I like to think of this as being an umbrella leader. I used to explain this to my team as I want to provide shelter for you when I was a team lead, so that things coming from above don't hit you without going through me first. And that allows me to moderate. And also my umbrella as a team lead would provide a safe space to be a team. It's sheltered, and I as a team leader could control the atmosphere to some degree. And doing that with check-ins with your staff allows them to be sheltered by you so they can express those emotions. It provides that space to grieve a loss, and it fosters hope, and you can therefore have space to model gratitude and to show how you cope with stress from above as well. Okay. On this next slide, we're talking about effective leaders and how those leaders help the team focus on what is really important. So in this time of COVID, and frankly, any time of stress, it's really easy to be caught up in what's demanding your attention at the time. There's always fires to be put out. There's always external forces. And that's why I mentioned COVID, because that really kind of shapes our view of the world right now for a lot of us. If you get caught up in what is demanding your attention, you may forget that the focus is really on providing care to the patient, to the veteran, to the client. And you might end up, feeling kind of pulled in a million directions and run by numbers instead of by care. So letting people know, we gave this example, is we may not be able to conduct a 50-minute session right now, right? Your WRVUs are not as critical as care for the patient. Do what needs to be done. Do what the right thing is. And don't focus on those other things that are demanding your attention in those times of stress. And then finally, and we have this in really big letters at the bottom, Celebrate the good things regularly. Celebrate the wins as often as possible. Individual wins, and that also allows you to praise, individuals on the team. Team wins, that allows you to praise the team to themselves. And as a leader, provide that team praise upward. So leadership within your office and within your organization understands the value of the team. And then also celebrating organizational wins are really important. Okay. And then to keep that up feeling going, these reminders should help. I'm going to read them specifically because we have another modality then to help us remember these things because they're so important. The first one, be kind. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Working remotely and working in times of stress, we may not always work remotely, but we certainly always work in various times of stress, really can get us to lose focus in the same way we were talking about before. You forget your humanity and you forget your kindness to yourself and to others. And the second one, not every connection works the first time. So not everything you try when connecting with someone will work. You may have to try a few different things to get a fit, but it's really important with your team to find a way to have that shared experience and that shared understanding. The third one, remind yourself to first give the benefit of the doubt before you make up your mind about something, before you get angry, before you get upset. If someone says something or does something that seems wrong or offensive, check it out first and give it doubt to begin with. It's always easier to work through things before you're activated. And oftentimes, and I've seen this time and again, people don't intend what it sounds like they're saying or doing. They just messed up. And number 4, genuine contact is critical. And it doesn't need to be lengthy. You don't have to spend an hour talking with your team members, talking with your, if you're the team lead, talking with anyone on the team. It just needs to be genuine. And looking at the time too, I'm just turning this over now to the last in our discussion, Dr. Claire Collie, for the rest of the presentation. Dr. Collie?
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Hunt. So really, when thinking about ways for your virtual team to connect, this time of year may offer some opportunities to do so. Prior to COVID, many teams often chose to have in-person opportunities to socialize and connect with one another around this time of year with activities like team potlucks, lunches, and fun activities during team meetings and other things. If this is something your team did prior to COVID, or even if your team likes the idea of trying something new while working remotely, we strongly encourage you and your team to think about ways that you may be able to have a virtual activity that helps bring the team together in a festive and fun way. So here are a couple of potential ideas. And next slide, please, Dr. Hunt. And while we're waiting, I'm just going to, there we go. And then here are a few other ideas and some really, one of my favorite is at the bottom, having a virtual meeting with a prize for the wackiest holiday attire. We were just discussing among our team about how much fun that would be. So I'm going to challenge our team. I think we should do that. But, whatever it is that your team decides to do, each team member can be encouraged to share a memory or tradition from however, they personally celebrate the holidays, or if they don't typically engage in celebration at this time of year, to perhaps share a tradition or memory from other times that they and their loved ones celebrate together. Next slide, please. And, one of the things that I love the most about the holidays is it for me personally, offers a time to really kind of think back over the year and reflect to myself and think about all the things that I have to be grateful for. And then it's an opportunity to express that gratitude and share that gratitude with others. So, these are also some ideas that, if this is something that your team decides that, you would like to do together, there's some ways, again, even during COVID, even in the midst of a pandemic, that perhaps virtually you all could collaborate together around this. But I think it's just really important to remember that what your team does is really less important than the spirit in which your team does it. So, this is an opportunity to really get everyone involved, get, all your team members' ideas, get their input, and truly make it a team building experience and a way for you to connect with each other as individuals. That's sort of stepping outside of the hustle and bustle of just your day-to-day, business in your clinic or in your work group. It's just a really nice opportunity to connect with each other as kind of people, as well as colleagues. Next slide, please. Okay, we just have a few minutes left, so I'd like to just shift gears briefly and invite all of you to think about how you and your team might be able to implement some of the ideas and strategies that we've been discussing today. I know I find myself constantly amazed by the level of creativity that so many of our colleagues in VA are showing in finding ways to connect with each other remotely during this pandemic. So we hope you will consider participating in the discussion, as I'm sure many of you have great ideas and examples from your own teams that we'd all love to hear about. So I'm going to read a hypothetical scenario and then invite all of you to share your thoughts about how you and your team might try approaching this by typing your ideas or experiences in the chat. Next slide, please. So for the scenario is that now that you and your team have been working virtually for some time, several team members have expressed a concern about what they perceive as a loss of opportunities for more informal consultation and check-ins with each other, outside of things like scheduled team meetings and huddles and things like that. And I think some of you have maybe even commented on that earlier in the chat. So thinking about that, how might your team ensure that these more informal opportunities to connect and check in can continue even virtually or remotely? So thinking about, what are some of the ways that you found useful for reaching out, connecting with teammates virtually, and just, again, in the interest of time, I think I'm just going to share, some of the things that our team has found really helpful is really making use of that IM chat function in Teams, texting each other. I've heard of some team having a virtual break room or water cooler space. Oh, I love that in the chat. Yes, I love that. Having a designated check-in time on your schedules. I think that's a fantastic idea. So, and I think the important thing is just really thinking about ways that you can maybe remind yourself to step outside of your virtual bubble that you may be working within, and really making that effort to reach out and connect with your colleagues outside of scheduled meeting times. And several of you had mentioned in the chat kind of concern about not wanting to intrude on other people's time and schedule. So I think that's a great opportunity for a discussion together as a team as to how you want to handle that. Because, for example, if you can send an IM, and if the person's busy, they don't have to respond right away. And I think that's something, if that's worked out ahead of time, people won't find it intrusive and will understand. So, all right. And then just briefly, next, could you jump ahead, Dr. Hunt, just to the resources and just go ahead and kind of go through them really quickly? And you will get a copy of the slides, I believe. So we just want to point out some resources that we've shared. Many of these resources are forward-facing, and so they're available outside the VA. But we did want to mention we've included a few that are available only internally within the VA. So we suggest before you send a a link to a colleague who may not be within the VA, just check it to make sure it can be accessed outside the VA. So for example, that it's not residing on the VHA intranet site, but it's available on the VHA internet site. So, and then finally, our last slide, this is just a quick reminder of our team and who we are, and it has our contact information. You know, if there's any way we can be helpful to you, please don't hesitate to reach out, you know, whether it's about working virtually or pretty much anything else. You know, we would be glad to help however we can. All right, so with just a minute left to spare, I'm going to wrap it up and hand it back over to Dr. Uwamasa.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Collie. Thanks to all who attended. Thanks so much to the Quick team from OMHSP for sharing their wisdom and experience with us. This recording will be posted to the Division 18 VA section site probably in about a week or so. I posted the CEU survey in the chat, so please fill that out within the next 2 weeks. And you shall receive your CEUs after that. If you're not a Division 18 member, I also posted the link to our PayPal account so you can pay the $15. Okay, we know folks are dropping off and need to go. Thank you so much for sticking with us today and spending time with us today. And we'll see you at the next VA section webinar. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.